Representatives of 13 northern colonies have declared their independence from Great Britain. There are reports the Continental Army is massing in Savannah to prepare for an invasion of East Florida, and 3 slaves have been hanged in West Florida for plotting a slave rebellion. Details on these stories and more coming up.
Sunday News Update 76 with Carmel Cafaro.
The Continental Congress meeting in Philadelphia today voted unanimously to adopt a Declaration of Independence from Great Britain. The Congress represents the 13 northern colonies. The Floridas, East and West, were not represented. Wayne Ferris has been following the events in Philadelphia. Wayne, does this come as anything of a surprise?
No, Carmel, it doesn't. The delegates to the Continental Congress entered today's debate with their minds made up. The question was not whether the 13 colonies would proclaim their independence from Great Britain, but how they would justify the break. 2 days ago, the Congress sealed the colony's fate by adopting a resolution dissolving all political ties with Britain. The debate over the wording of the Declaration of Independence began immediately after the adoption of that resolution and climaxed today with the adoption after only a few changes of a document submitted by a 5-man committee headed by Thomas Jefferson of Virginia. The Declaration is heavily philosophical. It argues that when government fails to promote the welfare and protect the rights of the people have a right to rebel. It then proceeds to make over a score of charges against King George III in an attempt to justify the rebellious acts of Congress. Among the charges is that King George has, quote, abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection, plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. And the document accuses the king of authorizing acts of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages. Perhaps the most significant change made in the proposed declaration during the debate was the deletion of a section on slavery. Members of the South Carolina delegation argued that the king could not be indicted for ordering African slaves brought to the colonies. Slavery, they said, is an honorable institution and one in which many delegates are involved. The author of the Declaration, Thomas Jefferson, appeared pained by the change, but he did not press the issue. At the conclusion of the debate, Presiding Officer Benjamin Harrison of Virginia read the entire document aloud and proclaimed the Declaration adopted unanimously. So, Carmel, it appears the die is cast.
Thank you, Wayne. As we reported, the Floridas have not approved the declaration. Richard Whitcomb will have some comment on that later. In London, King George III had no formal reaction to the declaration today, but an aide said the declaration came as no surprise to the king. In St. Augustine, loyalists reacted loudly to the news of the declaration by burning effigies of the patriots.
An angry crowd of loyalists marched to the plaza in St. Augustine today, carrying with them effigies of Samuel Adams and John Hancock, 2 of the founders of the separatist movement in the northern colonies. Shouting jeers and curses, the crowd mounted the effigies on a post and set them ablaze. Anti-patriot sentiment runs deep in East Florida. Many of these people were run out of their homes in the north by rebel terrorists and came to Florida seeking refuge.
They don't leave us alone, I don't know. That should have been them out there, the real ones.
A fine king like our king, who's taken care of us all these years, and to turn against him like that, bloody ingratitude, a bunch of banditti, the whole entire bunch of them.
Though he did not personally attend today's demonstration, Governor Tonin relayed his support to the protesters.
Earlier this year, Governor Tonin remarked, after a clash with a political rival, that there weren't a half-dozen loyal subjects in all of East Florida. But today's demonstration provides ample evidence of the fact that the people of St. Augustine still feel more British than American.
It was strictly business as usual in the West Florida capital of Pensacola today. There have been rumors of a formal break between the northern colonies and Britain, but the governor's office is doing its best to keep a lid on all reports of the rebellion.
2 years ago, when the Continental Congress sent overtures to the West Florida Assembly, the letter was sent to the Attorney General, who delivered it to Governor Chester. And Chester saw to it that the contents of that letter never reached the legislature. In any event, the people we talked with today expressed no shock over the news of the declaration.
Problems with the Spanish, the Indians, and now the northern colonies, and I just hope they don't all gang up on us.
I think it's the most asinine thing I have ever heard of.
Are you worried?
No, the Crown will know what to do with them.
I think the king will teach them a lesson.
But the official reaction in Pensacola is no reaction.
Independence from the Crown. Now, what's your reaction?
I've heard no such report and don't think you should be spreading malicious rumors.
It is far more than rumors, sir. We've confirmed it.
I have nothing more to say and suggest you say no more.
So, from West Florida, apparently there is no more to say. This is George Crolius for Channel 7 News.
Channel 7 News has learned that General Charles Lee of the Continental Army has moved to Savannah to begin preparations for an attack on East Florida. Royal military officials here say such an attack has been expected for months, and they are prepared for it.
Fort St. Mark's in St. Augustine is the cornerstone of East Florida's defenses. It's the headquarters for the more than 750 troops now stationed in the province. Roughly, there are 150 men stationed along the northern border, another 40 at Fort Matanzas and New Smyrna. The troops at the fort are mostly raw recruits, and much of their duty time is spent on the drill field, learning the basics of military discipline. Fewer than half of the 450 men stationed at the fort could be considered seasoned soldiers. The fort is armed with 50 artillery pieces, but there are now barely that many men in the garrison who know how to load and fire them.
The reports from the St. Mary's River are not good. The Georgia militia is harassing plantation owners, trying to block the shipment of cattle south to Florida.
Well, the St. Mary's is not a good defensive position. Geographically, the St. Johns River would be far preferable. But if we continue to be harassed along the St. Mary's, we may have to fall back to the St. Johns.
You are confident, though, that this province is well defended, that you won't be overrun?
I assure you, we are in complete security. We will not be overrun.
To supplement the royal troops, Governor Tonin last month authorized a provincial militia known as the East Florida Rangers. Rangers Commander Thomas Brown is a refugee from Georgia. He made the first leg of his journey under rather ignominious circumstances, in a pony cart, clad in a suit of tar and feathers, tailored by the Liberty Boys. And now, he wants revenge.
Well, to start with, I'm going to get even with some of those Liberty Boys who ran me out of Augusta and off my land. I'll never forget what they did to me. And I'll see to it that they don't either.
Do you plan to strike at some of the Georgia raiders who've been hitting our plantations along the border?
Well, I plan to do a little raiding of my own. We don't have any cattle down here. I plan to bring some down from across the river. And our settlers are not safe along the river. I plan to see that theirs are not either.
Thus far, most of the battles fought in the Floridas have been hit-and-run border conflicts. But intelligence sources now say East Florida stands under direct threat of attack from Patriot regulars. The Spanish to the west now covertly are aiding the Patriots. So it appears the untested royal recruits and the East Florida Rangers training here soon may have to prove their worth. Mark Lundner, Channel 7 News, St. Augustine.
A dispatch from London reports that East Florida's suspended Chief Justice, William Drayton, has been reinstated. But investigative reporter John Camp has found the circumstances surrounding the reinstatement questionable.
WCKT News has learned that the Board of Trade has reinstated the controversial Chief Justice of East Florida, William Drayton, without hearing both sides of the case that led to his suspension. Our sources indicate that the action was taken even after the Board of Trade learned that a ship carrying a copy of Governor Patrick Tonin's charges and supporting evidence was lost at sea. Governor Tonin brought the charges that led to Drayton's dismissal by the Provincial Council at a hearing in February. At that hearing, my sources say Governor Tonin charged that Justice Drayton aided his friend and sometimes business partner Jonathan Bryan to escape from East Florida. Bryan fled the province before he could be arrested on land fraud charges. He allegedly hoodwinked a group of Seminole Indians into selling him 5 million acres of land for an annual payment of 100 bushels of corn. Drayton allegedly had a financial interest in that deal. Tonin also alleged that Drayton conspired to transmit information on the defenses of East Florida to his cousin, William Henry Drayton, a member of the radical Georgia Council of Safety. Drayton is no stranger to controversy. 5 years ago, he resigned from the Provincial Council in a dispute with acting Governor Moultrie, was reinstated, then suspended again for delaying a grand jury report and insulting a council member. Drayton fled the province on a ship with his close political ally, Dr. Andrew Turnbull, the founder of New Smyrna Colony. Turnbull has been a constant headache for the governor, heading along with Drayton, the so-called inflamed faction. Turnbull has been critical of the governor's militia and refused to allow any of his Minorican servants to be drafted. He has tried to force the governor to create an elected legislature, and before leaving, publicly accused Governor Tonin of corruption and incompetence. Turnbull's departure was hurried. My sources say Tonin threatened to jail Dr. Turnbull for sedition. Turnbull will appear before the Board of Trade next month to lodge complaints against the governor. Justice Drayton plans to return to Florida to resume his position as Chief Justice within the next few weeks. I'm John Camp, Channel 7 News.
Other developments indicate that Dr. Andrew Turnbull's problems aren't all political. Today, 3 representatives of the over 1,000 Minorcan indentured servants at Dr. Turnbull's New Smyrna Colony came to St. Augustine, telling tales of cruelty and abuse.
The 3 Minoricans sought a meeting with Governor Tonin, but were directed to Attorney General Henry Young. They spent over 3 hours detailing charges of abuse and even murder committed by Dr. Turnbull and his lieutenants. They told the Attorney General they had to sneak out of the colony and fear their lives may be in jeopardy when they returned. At the conclusion of today's meeting, a spokesman for the Minorcan delegation talked about problems at New Smyrna Colony.
They make our people work every day, even if they're sick. Some weeks, 10 people die from sickness. There's no medical help. One man, Peter DeMalchi, was worked so hard he couldn't even get out of bed. When he couldn't work, they refused him food. When he begged for food, they made him watch other people eat. They called him lazy and told him he had to work before he could eat. One morning they came to get him up, but they couldn't. He was dead.
Does Dr. Turnbull know about this?
Yes, he has even beaten some of our people when they have taken food because they were hungry.
Dr. Turnbull is now in London and unavailable for comment. We attempted to enter New Smyrna Colony today to film the conditions on the 101,000-acre plantation, but we were stopped by a Royal Infantryman on the King's Road outside New Smyrna. He said he had orders to keep everyone out and threaten us when we pressed a point.
Look, this is a public road and we intend to use it. Come on.
I said, halt. You'll not go to New Smyrna today. Move out, move. You two, get out, move.
Apparently we're not going to be able to film the conditions inside New Smyrna, but we do know what's in the public records. In the 9 years since Dr. Turnbull brought 1,400 Minorcans here, 850 of them have died. Bill Urbizu, Channel 7 News, outside New Smyrna.
Indian leaders are reportedly losing patience with official attempts to clear settlers off their land. Despite pleas from Indian Superintendent John Stewart, some attacks have already taken place. Today, I talked with Creek leader Cowkeeper about the situation.
The Cherokees and our young warriors have grown eager to fight. Mr. Stewart wants to talk. The young warriors wants to fight and drive the enemy, and the king's enemy, out of our land.
You say your young men feel this way. How do you feel?
The young warriors may be right. Mr. Stewart bring us supplies and ammunition. Tell us not to use them on the enemy unless they strike first. But maybe if we wait, we will die like wounded deer in the forest as they take our land. Maybe it'd be better if we strike first. But for now, we will wait while Mr. Stewart talks.
Slave owners along the Mississippi River in West Florida have executed 3 slaves for plotting a rebellion against their masters. The planners say the situation is now under control.
Things have returned to near normal on the William Dunbar plantation in West Florida. The slaves are being closely supervised and worked in open areas to avoid potential trouble. Just 2 days ago, these slaves were carrying away 3 of their comrades, hanged for plotting a slave rebellion. Another reportedly committed suicide by jumping from a boat into the river with his hands tied behind his back. Under provincial law, the owner of a slave who is executed legally is supposed to be reimbursed for the value of the slave. But no money has been appropriated to pay the slave owners, so other planners chipped in to compensate for Dunbar's loss.
Thank you, General.
Today, back on his plantation near Manchac, Dunbar said he still can't understand the reasons for the slaves' plot.
What avail is kindness when it is rewarded with such ingratitude? Of course they are slaves, and I expect them to do a fair amount of work, but I treat them fairly. 2 of the 3 Negroes who did this dastardly deed had never even felt the whip.
Do you think we've seen the last of a slave rebellion?
Yes. Yes, they have learned their lesson. But now I suspect we shall see more of them trying to run away. Whatever the case, we'll have to keep our eyes open.
Prior to the discovery of the plot, there had been talk in West Florida, as well as in East Florida, of arming slaves to defend the province against the Patriots to the north, as well as the Spanish to the west. But now, many owners suspect their slaves would be just as inclined to use their guns on them as they would on any invaders. Richard Whitcomb at the Dunbar Plantation for Channel 7 News.
According to preliminary figures compiled by the Board of Trade, Florida's exports to England are up 48% over last year. Imports from England are up nearly 470%. Officials say the increased imports are mostly military support materials. Exactly 1 year ago tomorrow, Lord George Germain offered land in the Floridas to Loyalists being persecuted in the north. But many Loyalist refugees are finding the land they were offered just isn't available.
In the past 12 months, perhaps 200 Loyalists have come to the Floridas seeking refuge, and literally thousands more are expected. The Crown promised free land and a new start to the refugees. But many have found that there simply is no desirable land available. Most of that desirable land is controlled by nobles and speculators in London, who snapped up huge royal land grants when Britain took over the Floridas 13 years ago. Recipients were supposed to settle the land or give it up, but only about 4% of the land has been settled, and none of the grants have been foreclosed.
The governor promised in the advertisements that we would be given good land.
Yes, indeed.
And I intend to go to the governor. Or is it his cronies that are squatting on the land?
Go to the governor. I cannot do anything.
Government officials have been speculating. For instance, the minutes of a recent West Florida council meeting reveals that the council granted 1,000 acres of land to the wives of everyone sitting on the council that day, including Jane Chester, the governor's wife.
Before I came down here, I saw advertisements everywhere saying, Loyalists, come to Florida. We'll give you land, a new start. Now, they promised all that, and every one of them was signed by the governor. So I left my farm, my home, and I brought my family and my slaves down here, and what am I offered? 1,000 acres of swamp. And that thief wants 25 pounds to survey it for me. There's no justice.
Well, Governor Tannen indicates that he plans to react to all this by petitioning the king for the authority to foreclose on those public lands that have not been settled within the prescribed time. However, the governor warns that he is not optimistic about the chances for his plan to succeed. Chuck Diamond, Channel 7 News.
While speculators have spoken for most of the land in northern Florida, millions of acres of land are available in the southern part of the state. That's the good news. Rita Siegfried has the bad.
Unexplored lands of southern Florida may well be the land of the future. But, according to geologist Thomas Buchanan, who has studied the area, it's not the land of the near future.
Realistically, what would it take to make this area habitable and productive?
Well, it would take a great deal of man-made works to keep this land so it wouldn't be flooded during the wet season. The high land that we do have is really not good land for agriculture, and the good land for agriculture is underwater during the wet season. during the dry season, when it is exposed, we don't get enough rain to grow crops. So we'd have to do something about the water situation before we could really make this a good agricultural area.
Realistically, how practical would that be?
At this time, I don't think it's practical. There's a lot of good land in North Florida, from St. Augustine all the way down to Lake Okeechobee.
The geologist's pessimistic assessment of the future of South Florida is based solely on natural roadblocks to development. But South Florida's proximity to Spanish-controlled Cuba makes settlement here undesirable militarily as well. So it appears that, at least for the foreseeable future, South Florida will be left for the mosquitoes and the sand fleas. Rita Siegfried in South Florida, reporting for Channel 7 News.
The Provincial Council of East Florida today voted to offer a 100-pound sterling reward for the arrest of George Mills and Brian Doherty. According to the council, the two have become traitors to the Crown. Mills and Doherty allegedly tried to extort money and supplies from John Russell, owner of the extensive Russell Plantation properties in the St. Augustine area. Incidentally, that isn't WCKT's George Mills the authorities are after, and he's here now with the sports.
Thanks for clearing that up, Carmel. An East Florida Ranger pulled a bit of an upset over two Redcoats today in a target shooting match up at St. Augustine. Seems the Redcoats were bragging about their abilities with a musket at the expense of the newly formed Rangers, and the boast led to wagering. Two marksmen from the 60th Regiment took on Captain James McGirth of the Rangers in a 10-shot match. It was a tight affair, but both of the British entries had hang fires on the 5th shot and missed the stake. McGirth clinched the victory with this dead center hit on his final shot. The size of the purse was not disclosed, but the Rangers' budget for recruiting is said to have taken a significant jump when the bets were paid off. There's a lot of sporting activity over at Woods Tavern this weekend. Just underway, a Skittles tournament. No results at this point. Meantime, lawn bowling continues to increase in popularity here in the Floridas, especially in West Florida, where there's a heavy concentration of Scottish settlers. Quite a crowd gathered today to watch a singles match between Robert Kinloch and James Walker in Pensacola. The green was a little bumpy, but Kinloch got off to a 9-3 lead through the 8th end. Points are awarded to the contestant who leaves his bowls closest to the jack ball. That's the white one. Going into the 16th and final end, Walker managed to narrow the margin to 11-9, then bowled this incredible shot, knocking the jack against 3 of his bowls, giving him the victory. And that's about it for Sports, Carmel. I think I'll go down to Woods Tavern now and watch some of the Skittles match.
I'll see you down there later. A group of Scottish planters and traders from throughout West Florida gathered today at Pensacola for a summer ceilidh, a Scottish celebration. Represented at the party were such notables as the McGilvrays and the Leslies, well-known Indian traders, along with 24 successful planters and merchants. In Scotland, the kilt has been outlawed by the king, but here they still wear them with pride on special occasions when they celebrate their heritage and traditions. It was a hot, humid summer day across Florida, and I understand from Wayne Shattuck we can expect more of the same tomorrow.
That's right, it was hot and humid today, Carmel, and we weren't the only ones that were uncomfortable. These are the seasonal normal temperatures across the colonies at this time of year, but it has been considerably hotter than normal in most of the colonies. I understand it was so hot and humid in the Philadelphia area where the Continental Congress has been meeting, and one of the major items of debate was whether to open the windows to let the breeze in or close them and keep the flies out. In the Floridas, the weather we can expect this month will be hot, humid, and healthy. And there should be even a few mid-afternoon thunder showers along the coast. Now, the winds have been out of the south and southeast, and we're hoping that they won't become westerly. In the past, we've found that westerly winds invariably bring yellow fever and outbreaks of malaria. And the wind should be out of the southeast at 10 to 12 knots tomorrow, with the highs in the east and western sections of Florida in the mid-90s. Lows will run down into the mid-70s. Now, the next high tide in the Pensacola area will come at 6:17 in the morning. And we are currently standing at low tide. In the St. Augustine area, the next high tide will be at 1:11 a.m., and it will ebb at 7:51 a.m. Now, those tides, of course, are all important for activity at the port of St. Augustine. Now, that port has been called the most dangerous harbor of the southern Atlantic coast because of its shallow, crooked channel. Today, we talked with Royal Engineer William Gerard de Brom about the prospects for improving that channel.
Cause of this is the materials that run out through the inlet, and as they intersect with the ocean waters, there's a turbulence created and the fines and sands drop out, thereby creating this sandbar, which is quite dangerous to our ships. There is no immediate way that we can solve this problem. I've recommended to my higher authorities that we relocate the St. Augustine port northerly to the St. Mary's River or the River of May.
So, Carmel, it looks like we're going to have healthy weather and a lousy harbor.
Okay, just keep those winds coming out of the south.
I'll do my best.
The topic of Richard Whitcomb's commentary tonight is the Floridas and the Declaration of Independence.
We have had our cake and eaten it, and now we will surely pay for it. The Declaration of Independence bears no signatures of Florida delegates. We weren't even present. We snubbed the Continental Congress not once but twice, and the colonials are not likely to forget it. I realize, of course, that Florida, unlike our sister colonies, has not been burdened by taxes, but then we are nothing more than a company-owned store. We are here to serve the Crown, a staging area for launching military attacks upon the Yankees, perhaps even the Spanish, which could be our Achilles heel. After all, we are geographically isolated. We have no friends. We govern as a minority. The Minorcan majority owes its allegiance to the Spanish. The Indians and the black slaves care less to whom they're indentured. What's more, our roots are only 13 years deep, offering little stability in hostile territory. It is unfortunate that we're about to be drawn into a losing conflict. If we do not join the colonials, I have the desperate feeling that we will have chosen the wrong side. The Spanish are not likely to lose the opportunity to ally themselves with the rebel cause, particularly since they have designs on the restoration of East and West Florida to the Spanish tongue. Surely Governor Patrick Toynin does not serve Florida's interest by burning the rebel leaders in effigy. If this be treason, then so be it. But the governor could better spend his time negotiating with the rebels now. Because I, for one, believe that Florida's future, our growth, our development, if not our survival alone, depends upon an early alliance with the colonials. Carmel?
Recapping today's top stories, the Continental Congress meeting in Philadelphia has unanimously approved a Declaration of Independence from Great Britain. In St. Augustine, citizens reacted to the news by burning 2 of the architects of the document in effigy. There are reports that General Charles Lee is in Savannah attempting to organize a military campaign against East Florida. And slave owners in West Florida say a plot to stir up a slave rebellion has been stopped with the execution of 3 slaves. That's it for Sunday News Update 76. Please join me tonight at 11. Thanks for being with us.
Sunday News Update 76 with Carmel Cafaro was recorded.